I'm John Heilemann.
And I'm Mark Halperin in Chicago. And with all due respect to Gotham City and Honolulu, it takes big shoulders to support a presidential library.
On the show tonight.
Well, first, the deal that was blocked. Or is it? The trade measure that's been Washington's main focus this week is in big trouble. President Obama wants it on his desk, but senators in his own party put the kibosh on it this afternoon when the cloture monster struck again. John, can fast track get back on track?
I think the answer to that question, Mark, is no. It seems to me at this point going to be very difficult to do. There's now so much acrimony, so much finger pointing, and this is the Senate where this was supposed to have an easier chance of getting things through. You've got Republicans blaming Democrats, Democrats blaming Republicans, and there's not that much enthusiasm to get this going. Nobody fighting for this that needs to fight for it in the middle.
Trade deals require bipartisan cooperation. That's been in short supply. But they also require a president fighting tooth and nail, browbeating, making appeals. I don't have any indication the president's really doing that. He's doing what he often does, deferring to the Hill. Unless he gets much more involved and makes the case dramatically, I don't think it's going to happen.
I think if there's any hope in this, I think the hope is in Ron Wyden, who has a history of working in a bipartisan way and is both a pro-free trade Democrat who has some issues on the specifics with this deal and is saying that he's going to take the lead in terms of trying to knit back together some kind of bipartisan consensus to get fast track back on track. But I have doubts he can pull it off.
The stakes are so high because if they can't get cooperation on this trade was supposed to be the place where the president agreed so strongly with the Republicans they could get cooperation from enough Democrats and move forward on transportation and other things. If this goes down, picking up the pieces is going to be tough. There's going to be another attempt in the Senate to get it through, but every time they make a change to pacify one group, they risk losing votes from another, let alone the House and the White House.
Absolutely. All right. Chris Christie wants back in on all the 2016 fun. And he thinks ideas are the way to do it. First, he put out a proposal for entitlement reform, and today in Manchester, New Hampshire, he offered a 5-point economic plan. Here they are: tax reform, curbing regulation, a national energy strategy, work incentives, and promoting innovation. Wow, that sounds awesome. By the way, Christie has a long way to go to get back on the road to redemption. He currently registers at just 7% in our new Hampshire poll, down from 10% in February. So, Mark, is specificity and detail the way back for Chris Christie?
Well, you know, the new thing in there in the Wall Street Journal op-ed and in the speech was a tax reform proposal, lowered rates, limit some of the deductions, says it'll be revenue neutral. There's a lot there to pick over, a lot more detail still to come. But I think if Christie's specific and can draw not just news coverage but pick fights with Republicans, I think it's a good idea. Being the ideas candidate and the aggressive fighting candidate, it's a potent combination. Still not clear how he fights back, but I think there's a good idea for him politically and substantively because it gets the debate going.
I don't disagree with that notion. I mean, he's got to have some way back, and this is as good a way as any. But in general, I think you would agree with me that you usually have the way that it usually works well for a candidate is when they are strong and on a roll politically, and then they roll out substance, right? And they build on their political strength, not the other way around. It's hard to lead with substance and build political momentum on the back of that. Christie, if there's no one in the party who's more talented than Christie, if there's anyone who could do it, it's him. But I have some doubts that even he can pull that off.
So he did an interview with Jake Tapper in conjunction with this economic speech in New Hampshire, and he took a pretty strong position in saying that if he knew then what he knows now, what the country knows now about the Iraq war, it wouldn't have been worth it. And that lays down a little bit of a marker, not just with Jeb Bush, who fumbled that question in some ways over the weekend, but with some of the other Republicans who I don't think will have the courage to take that position because it does run a little bit counter to a lot of leading Republicans who say it's still worth it.
Yeah, I got to say, I think at this point that it's not quite as courageous as it might have been a few years ago. There's an awful lot of Republicans who came down really hard on Jeb Bush, from the far right to the middle right to the moderate right, who all think that it's now kind of conventional wisdom that the thing wasn't worth it. So I'm not sure that a lot of other Republicans won't pile in right behind Christie, and he's not going to get much benefit from that.
The other thing about Kristen, these ideas, of course, is as long as the New Jersey economy is not doing well, it's hard for him to be a credible messenger on the economy. Right. He can do it, but it's going to be hard for people to say this guy really gets how to create economic growth if he hasn't been able to do it in one-plus terms in New Jersey.
Yeah, well, and of course, then there's the question of whether some of these proposals actually add up, and we're going to get to see the green eye shade types going over this in days to come. I'm not sure it's going to be totally bulletproof.
All right, he may not be as bad as Lance Armstrong, but Tom Brady, quarterback of New England, was hit with the suspension for his role in allegedly cheating to get to the Super Bowl. How did the only world that matters, of course, the TV world, greet this news? Enjoy.
Tom Brady should not have done this. The Patriots shouldn't have done it. It is cheating. It's not fair. It gives them an edge, but it's not on the same level.
I don't know what the appropriate punishment is when there's no proof. Probably no punishment.
I very rarely would test the football. I would know. Okay. So everybody would know.
I think it's way too harsh. I think it's an overreaction and an overpunishment. There's no definitive proof that Tom Brady had engaged in any of this.
I don't think it's wildly severe. I just think it's a little heavy-handed.
Yeah, they're going to punish him by making him stay home in his mansion with his supermodel wife and think about what he did wrong.
So as everybody knows, Brady gets a 4-game suspension. The team gets fined $1 million. They lose a couple draft picks. John, is this punishment for Brady and the team too much, too little, or Goldilocks pure perfection?
I got to say, I'm certainly not in the category of people who think it's too much. He cheated, right? And there's got to be some kind of a penalty for that. The notion that, for a lot of people, the comparison that bothers them is the notion that Ray Rice only got a 2-game suspension, and that that comparison rankles. But to me, that just says they should come down harder on Ray Rice, not that they should have come down easier on Tom Brady.
It's a new day. It's a new day for the NFL. The comparison to the old penalties, which were insufficient, is ridiculous. He either cheated or he didn't. And if the league thinks he cheated, 4 games is not nearly a big enough suspension, as far as I'm concerned.
I got to say, that commissioner has had a hard time. He cannot get it right. He's not satisfying anybody in this debate, and there's just no way for him to win here. All right, there's the bell. Okay, so coming up, we have 2 great guests that go great in sequence. What Bernie Sanders thinks about Tom Brady, and what Tom Brokaw thinks about Obamacare. We'll be right back after the break.
The trade agreements pushed by corporate America, pushed by Wall Street, pushed by the pharmaceutical industry, are very, very good if you are the CEO of a major corporation, but they are a disaster if you are an American worker.
Our guest tonight is a monster of the Senate who scared me half to death the last time he was on the show. Senator Bernie Sanders, thanks for making time for us this evening. Senator Sanders,
you're never going to forgive me for that, are you?
I'm not. Neither is my cardiologist. Right now, Senator Sanders, there's been a lot of action today on trade. Republicans are saying that this trade pact is effectively dead, and that Democrats are to blame. I'm going to ask you a 2-part question. Number 1, do you think that it's dead? And if it is dead, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I wish it were dead, but, you know, the Republicans control the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House. I have the feeling that they're going to bring it back up again. Senator Sanders, do you object? I mean, I know you have specific objections to this trade agreement, but it seems to me on the basis of things that you've said about 20 years of trade deals that you have a broader problem with free trade. So can you just say whether it's the specifics here? Is there some way in which this bill or these set of bills could be changed that would make this deal okay with you, or are you basically just against the concept of liberalizing trade at this point in American economic history? I am for a good trade bill that benefits workers, but I'm not for a trade bill that will continue the race to the bottom and that could cost us hundreds of thousands or millions of more jobs. Look, the record is very clear. NAFTA, permanent normal trade relations with China, have failed. We have lost 60,000 factories in America since 2001, and a lot of that has to do with trade. Workers today are working longer hours for lower wages because they don't have decent manufacturing jobs. The minimum wage in Vietnam is 56 cents an hour. No, I do not believe that American workers should be competing against people who are forced to work for such low wages.
Senator Sanders, obviously President Obama disagrees with you pretty vehemently. If this deal does go down on the basis of Democratic objections like yours, there are people who think that that is pretty much the end of President Obama's administration. domestically, that he won't really have any chance to get anything else done. If that is the case, do you feel any sense of guilt or responsibility for that?
No, that's just inside the Beltway punditry. 2 weeks from now, we'll be dealing with other important issues. For example, the president is going to deal with the scandal in terms of overtime, so the people who work more than 40 hours a week get time and a half. We're going to work to raise the minimum wage. We're going to work on pay equity. We're going to work on the infrastructure. This trade agreement, to my mind, is a very bad idea. President Obama follows President Clinton and Bush and Reagan in pushing, in this case, the corporate agenda. They're wrong. I hope it's defeated. I think the American people want it defeated. We need new trade agreements which protect American workers and not just Wall Street and corporate America.
Senator, if it is defeated, it seems to be the case that Republican in the Senate and in the House cooperation with the president might be at an end. The agenda that you laid out is going to require some Republican votes. So are you optimistic? Would your message to the president be, let this deal go down, but let's all find a way to both parties to work together on your agenda, or is that not possible?
No, I think right. Let this deal go down. Forget about unfettered free trade. Let's work on a new fundamental approach toward trade. In the meantime, let us rally the American people. The American people are very clear. What they want, for example, is to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure where we can create millions of jobs. Let's work on that. The American people want to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. Let's work on that. Almost everybody agrees that it's wrong when women make 78 cents an hour compared to men. Let's work on that. So there are a lot of issues out there that we can work on together. Let's rally the American people. Let's put pressure on Republicans to start standing up for ordinary folks rather than just their campaign contributors.
Senator, two of your friends, Elizabeth Warren and Mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, put forward today a list of things very much like you're talking about. I'm wondering, right now, as you look at Elizabeth Warren, you look at Hillary Clinton, which one of them would you say is more ideologically aligned with you?
Well, there's no question about it. Elizabeth Warren has been a friend of mine for many years. We work closely on many issues. I think our approach toward the needs of the American people are very similar.
So where would you say that, what are the specific issues where you'd say you're more in line ideologically with Elizabeth Warren than you are with Hillary Clinton?
Well, we're talking about right now trade policy and the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Senator Warren and I have worked together and very closely with Sherrod Brown and others in saying this is not a good agreement for American workers. Secretary Clinton has not been clear about her position on this issue. In terms of Wall Street, I have called for the breaking up of the large financial institutions. I think they have too much power. I worry about another too big to fail. I worry about their outsized influence on the economy. I think that's very similar to what Elizabeth Warren believes. Secretary Clinton, I'm not quite sure where she's coming on that position. I voted against the war in Iraq. Senator Warren was not in the Senate at that time. Secretary Clinton voted against that. I voted against the Keystone Pipeline and worry very much about climate change, the need to be bold. Secretary Clinton has not, I believe, been clear about her position on that issue.
Senator Sanders, I know you've been busy today, but as Mark just said, Mayor de Blasio has laid out his version of a contract with America, playing off Newt Gingrich's old conceit from the 1990s. Number one, will you be signing on to that contract, or do you think that contract doesn't even go quite as far as you think it needs to go?
Well, to be honest with you, I talked to Bill de Blasio a month or so ago. I think he's doing a great job in pushing a progressive agenda. I have not seen all of the details, but what I will tell you is that, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 months ago, we put out what we called an agenda for America, which I think probably is fairly close on most details in terms of what Mayor de Blasio was talking about. Bottom line is that when you have 99% of all new income going to the top 1%, and when the top 1/10 of 1% owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%, clearly, if we're going to have a sustainable economy, a moral economy, you have to deal with the situation of income and wealth inequality in America. And I know de Blasio feels the same thing.
Okay, Senator Sanders, I have one last question for you on a very, very serious topic. The only thing maybe more important than the fate of trans-Pacific trade, which is the fate of your favorite football team. I believe you are a New England Patriots fan. The NFL has come down with what some see as a quite draconian penalty for Deflategate, suspending Tom Brady for 4 games, taking away 2 draft picks, and fining the team $1 million. Is that too harsh, or is that just about right in your view for the infraction in question?
Well, let me just say that I hope very much that Brady gets back as soon as possible and New England repeats. I haven't yet studied that NFL document, so no comment on it.
Can I put you down then as being on the side of the cheaters, Senator Sanders?
No, you can't. It's just something that I have not thoroughly examined. Right now I'm working on TPP and raising the minimum wage and other minor issues like that.
Okay, when you have a chance to look over that report, we'll have you back on the show to do a detailed autopsy on it.
No, not just one show. We need to do many, many, many shows on that issue. How's that?
That sounds great. We'll do a whole week devoted to Deflategate and Senator Sanders with a few monster imitations along the way. Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you for coming on the show. When we come back, the man with all the answers, Tom Brokaw, after this. Joining us now is someone who should definitely be reading this teleprompter instead of me. Tom Brokaw, whose new book is called A Lucky Life Interrupted. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Tom, the obvious first question, how are you feeling?
Actually, I'm doing so much better, and I'm in remission. We just ran the numbers again last week. The doctors are all very pleased. Multiple myeloma is a nasty cancer. It's not curable, but it's treatable, and I'm in the treatable place right now, and we hope to keep it that way. I take a daily chemo, so low dosage, but that's my maintenance drug, and I'll do that for as long as it takes.
One of the great virtues of this book is that you are highly aware that you are Tom Brokaw and not like the average American. You have access and advantages in terms of dealing with the medical system that most normal people don't have. There's a lot of advice in the book to those normal people about how they should approach the medical system. What are some of the pieces of advice, the lessons you've learned that everyday Americans can learn from?
Do not walk into a doctor's office and think it's a Mayan temple speaking a language that you do not speak. Inform yourself before you get there. Do not be afraid to ask a question. Don't worry about asking a stupid question. It's your right to do that. The other thing you need to do, which happened in my case, serendipitously, our eldest daughter is a very smart, very aggressive ER physician, and she became my consigliere, my ombudsman. She was there to take notes, ask questions, and the medical teams all came to like her a lot because she was so helpful in telling them about what was going on with me, because she could read me in many ways better than I could at that point. Look, he's in more pain, he's telling you, that kind of thing. Right. So you get somebody who can do that for you. And then these days, you can go on Google and not read everything, but go to the good sites, the Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, Johns Hopkins, MD Anderson, if you've got cancer. Right. And they've got every cancer categorized. And you can find out what the latest stuff is and raise some questions with your primary caregivers.
Tom, you and I have both had a chance to be treated and spent time at the Mayo Clinic. It's one of the great institutions of any sort in America. And as a journalist, if you're there, you can't help but try to figure out what makes it so good. So what have you figured out that makes the Mayo Clinic such a supreme organization?
I think the genius of it was there's a man by the name of Dr. Plummer back in the late teens and early 20s of the 20th century who figured out they couldn't deal with the volume unless they got a system in place. He had a great medical mind, but he also has an engineering mind. He's the one who devised the system of record keeping and then making sure that if you have a complicated case and you have 2 or 3 physicians, they're all looking at it at the same time and sharing information simultaneously. It seems like that would be no brain surgery, frankly, that everybody ought to do that. But it's one of the few places in the world where they have systemized it. So everybody knows what's going on simultaneously, and you don't have to run from place to place to place and then keep catching up. That's a big, big piece of it. And the other part of it is, quite honestly, the doctors who go there are paid on a salary. They're not paid fee for service, and they know what they're going to earn. They're not going to order up extra tests just because they're going to get a little extra money. They live in Minnesota, and every time I hear one of them getting an award of some kind, they unfailingly praise their colleagues. They say, I'm just so lucky to be part of the Mayo Clinic. So it is an unusual institution, and I can't imagine why the rest of healthcare just doesn't take the model and copy it.
This is not a book about healthcare reform or about the Affordable Care Act, but you do offer a couple of comments in the book about Obamacare. I believe you say it's, quote, too wide-ranging and too complicated. What does that mean?
Well, I thought, when you had 2,800 pages that people had to wade through, that it was too complicated. I had been paying a lot of attention to healthcare reform at that point. You have to remember, I came of age when Medicare was being kicked in. And that was highly controversial.
Right.
The AMA was opposed to it. They said it was going to ruin medicine. Sure. And they rolled it out. Then I did a primetime documentary with Hillary Clinton, and I thought hers was too complicated. I would have thought that they should have been paying more attention to the economy at that point. And the second piece of it, because we do have to reform health care, let's start with the uninsured. Let's take care of those first, see what works, and get more input from the great institutions like the Cleveland Clinic and others. But it's massive, and people still haven't figured out what the costs are going to be altogether. We've got to do something about it. On the other hand, I also say in the book, the Republicans just took shots at it. They didn't come up with anything of their own. And that was a failure, I think, of their responsibility.
Tom, what do you think the country's looking for in the next president?
I really think that the country is looking for someone who can manage things well and that is responsive to their concerns, especially in the middle class. This business of the American dream fading, if not going away altogether, is a very, very big concern, Mark, as you know. And I don't think that the last election was an extraordinary ideological shift. I said on the air that night, what they've said is we're going to give the Republicans a chance. And if they don't get the job done, we'll find someone else who can. People are really looking not for some big philosophical shift. They're looking for a way to make the country work again the way that it should. I've been going around the country saying this country was built on a very big idea, that we would all create a republic in which we'd all have a voice and a role. And the great story of America is our big ideas, Abraham Lincoln, the Roosevelts, the World War II. We haven't had a big idea in American politics now for some time. We need a big idea that addresses the concerns of the country, is what I think they're looking for. That's my guess, Mark.
Let me ask you one last question, Tom, before we let you go, about Brian Williams. I was just have a little Freudian slip there. You were at the University of Chicago last month. You were asked about this, and you said basically there's a process in place, and we owe everybody, included on all sides of the issue, to let the process play out. I'm curious, just given that that's the case, I know you're not going to offer a judgment about this, but what do you think are the key factors in ultimately reaching a conclusion about whether Brian can sit in that chair again?
I'm not going to go there, quite honestly. I'm going to go back to my original answer. There's a process, in fairness to Brian and the family, in fairness to the people at NBC who are running this, especially in fairness to the people at NBC who show up every morning and go to dangerous places and work. Let's let the process play out. And any speculation that I offer, even to you and you're my friend, pop. It's on the social media, and I don't want to go there.
Well, God knows that's what I was hoping for.
You were.
We're looking for the pop on social media, but I totally understand your answer. The book, again, is A Lucky Life Interrupted. I have not read it yet, but I have every confidence that it is amazing and fantastic because the author is both of those things. Tom Brokaw, thanks for coming on, and we'll be right back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Two late-breaking pieces of Jeb Bush news. The Des Moines Register reports he'll skip the August straw poll in Iowa, and he just gave an answer to Sean Hannity on the Iraq War, attempting to clarify his position on the war. Didn't do it.
Tomorrow, we have former CIA Chief Mike Morrell. Until then, for Mark and me, sayonara.